friends, my name is Miss Bailey and welcome to our cooking video for today. Now, it's currently raining outside, and one thing that I love on these rainy days is a nice warm pastry. Today we will be making scrumptious Scottish scones from the Disney Princess Cookbook. And there are over 50 different recipes in this book for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and even some fun drinks. Oh, and here are some important safety tips when we're whipping it up in the kitchen. Never use a kitchen appliance or sharp utensil without asking for help from an adult. Always use a cutting board when slicing or chopping ingredients. And remember, steam can burn. Be sure to take a step back a bit when straining hot food such as pasta or cooked vegetables. And always don't forget to shut off the oven or stove burner when the food is done baking or cooking. Okay, so again, we're going to be making scrumptious Scottish scones, and it looks like this recipe is by our friend Merida from the movie Brave. So this recipe is calling for flour, rolled oats, baking powder, salt, cinnamon, nutmeg, brown sugar, cold butter, raisins, an egg, milk. Now before we get started, I'm gonna hop off real quick to wash my hands. Okay, so my hands are all nice and clean and my hair is already pulled back, so it's time to get to cooking. So the recipe is asking us to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. You may want to ask for help from an adult, so I'm going to hop off and do that real quick. Okay, so my oven is preheating now, and the recipe is asking us to stir together in a large bowl. I have my large bowl, our rolled oats, baking powder, salt, cinnamon, and brown sugar. So it's asking for a cup of flour, and I have a measuring cup here, and it actually marks off my measurements. So at the very top, we have 1 cup. Okay, so I've got my cup of flour, and I'm just gonna pour this in the bowl. And next we need a 4th cup of rolled oats. And a 4th cup is marked right there. Okay, and next it's time to add in our baking powder, and we'll be needing 2 teaspoons. So here we have a teaspoon, and we'll count together. 1, 2. And next we will be adding 1/4 a teaspoon of cinnamon, and here we have 1/4 a teaspoon. Okay, and then I'm going to use the same measuring spoon for our nutmeg. It'll be 1/4 a teaspoon. Okay, and next we'll be adding our 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and here is my handy dandy tablespoon, and we'll be counting 3 of these. Okay, and next it's time for us to add our cold butter. Now I have a stick of butter right here, and actually they've marked off the tablespoon measurements. So I'm just going to count on here 1, 2, 3, 4 where I need to cut off. And I would recommend grabbing an adult for this part since we are going to be using a knife. And I'm actually just going to use a butter knife but still it's important to have an adult when we're using knives. Also, I did forget to mention, we're supposed to mix the dry ingredients before we add in the butter. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And now it's time to add our butter. Now, the recipe is asking us to press firmly on the butter with our fingertips. Okay, so the butter has been packed into the flour mixture, and now it's time for us to grab an even smaller bowl to do our wet ingredients. So for our wet ingredients, we'll be needing 1 egg, and the easiest way to crack an egg is to firmly or gently tap it on a hard surface, and I like to do the 1-2 method, so 1, 2, and you see we've made a crack in our egg. So next, all you'll have to do is press on the crack with your 2 thumbs and break the egg apart. Okay, the next wet ingredient we will need is 1/4 cup of milk, and I will actually be using almond and cashew milk. This is just the only milk that we have at our house right now. So I'll get my handy dandy measuring cup back, and we find where 1/4 is right there. Okay, and now it's time for us to whisk together the milk and the egg. Okay, so now that the egg and the milk is all mixed together, I'm going to add this mixture to our flour mixture. Time for us to stir everything together. Now, you want to make sure everything is even, but you don't want to stir for too long or else the scones are going to be dense. So I've mixed everything together, and now here's the fun part. You're going to take a little bit of flour and fluff it on top of the dough, and also on a flat surface because we're going to roll the dough out. Okay, so my dough is all rolled out, and now it's time for us to make our topping. Our dough is rolled out, we're going to be making our topping. So we'll take our tablespoon and measure 1 tablespoon of our milk. Next, we'll take our brown sugar and get a tablespoon of this. And the last ingredient is just a pinch of rolled oats. Just going to take a small spoon and mix this all together. Time for us to drizzle this on top of our flour, or our dough. Okay, and last but certainly not least, it's time for us to add our raisins. I accidentally grabbed cranberries over raisins, but that's okay. I'm just going to be taking a little bit less of a handful of our cranberries and putting these on top of our dough. Okay, and now that our cranberries are on top of a dough, it's time for us to cut the scones into triangles. And I would recommend having an adult do this part because we are going to be using a very sharp knife. Okay, and our scones are on the cooking sheet or the cooking stone, and it's time for us to place them in the oven. Now your oven should already be preheated to 400 degrees. I would ask an adult for help with transferring our scones into the oven. mitts, and now I'm going to place these in the oven. Okay, so now that they're in the oven, I'm going to set a timer for about 10 minutes. Set a timer for 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes and counting.
So our scones are all done and out of the oven, and I've placed them on one of my tea plates, and they smell so good. So again, this recipe is from the Disney Princess Cookbook. This is available in the children's room. The library is open for browsing, so feel free to come on in. And also we have cooking programs for adults and teens, so be sure to check those out. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope to see you soon.